Okay, what have you done today to improve your finances? Now, before we get started, I would like to ask you, if you find my content valuable, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. Let's get into this. What have you done today to improve your finances? Well, I'll digress a little bit to tell you that what actually got me to even think about this subject was a coworker of mine, a friend who actually watches the channel and has kind of gone through the progression of the different things that I recommend, or the things that I've done to improve my own finances and get on a good path. Things I talk about all the time, like starting with that $2,000 emergency fund, going ahead and taking advantage of the company match that you might have at work, because often that's a 100% return on your money. Getting rid of consumer debt, things like credit cards, or if you have that tote the note, or what is that? Where they're taking payday loans. That's what I was looking for. Those sorts of things, getting rid of those kinds of debts. And then from there, once you're creating that margin by getting rid of that debt, looking into getting that 3 to 6 month emergency fund, because emergencies come up. And I mentioned in a previous video that around $10,000 is a good place to start. If you're able to live on $3,000 per month, and that takes care of your most essential living expenses, then 3 times 3 is 9, or $9,000, but round that up to $10,000. And then from there, actually taking further advantage of building wealth, actually saving in vehicles like 401k or Roth IRA, or even a brokerage account, to build wealth into the future that takes care of your transition time, what a lot of people would call retirement, but I like to say your transition to where you're able to, your assets are able to take care of your lifestyle, so that you have the time to do what you want, when you want, how you want to do it. But what I heard from that colleague was, she's watching my videos, and she's like, you had me at saving the $2,000, and you had me at eliminating debt and things like that, and taking up the company match. But then you get to saving 3 to 6 months living expenses, and that $10,000, you kind of lost me there. Now, I had to save $2,000, and then get rid of my debts, and then there's that $10,000, and it almost seems insurmountable. I think back to when I first heard that $10,000 number. It was at a business meeting that my wife and I were at. It was actually at our home. A person in direct sales was actually having a meeting at our home, and there were some other, I was in college, and some other student friends of ours and invited to that meeting. And when he was giving his presentation, one of the things that he said is to think about what is in your bank account right now. And if you continue to do the things that you're doing right now, 5 or 10 years from now, you're going to have that same amount in the bank. And some people would say, well, what I have in my bank savings account is 0. Well, if you continue to do the very, very same things, in 5 or 10 years, you're going to have $0 in your bank account. But him mentioning what would it be like, he mentioned in his presentation, if you had $10,000 in the bank. And what he was pitching, of course, was the direct sales company that he was working for, the business, to be able to do that. Now, I don't really endorse getting involved in direct sales or network marketing or MLM to earn extra income. I think that the cards are kind of stacked against you in those business opportunities, but that's a whole nother video. But my point here is that was the first time for me that I started to think about this $10,000. And my thought was, I could hardly fathom having $10,000 in something like a savings account. It seemed overwhelming. I didn't really comprehend how I could do something like that at that time. I was nowhere near having that in a savings account. And I couldn't see how I could ever bring myself to have that amount. Here on my phone, I was looking at some studies. There's one study that came out where they looked at Americans and how they're feeling economically. And that study found that 7 in 10 Americans, 69%, say that financial uncertainty has made them feel depressed or anxious. That is something. Another study surveyed 2,000 Americans and found that 52% of the respondents, or 53 rather percent of the respondents, feel stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure about what to do when it comes to their finances. This is where people are. They're stuck. They're overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. And even when they look at something like my channel, or they read a book or something else, and they see the progression that they can take by going from where they're at and taking certain steps all the way up to being financially free, maybe debt-free first, and then completely financially free in the future. But as they're reading and getting further and further on the steps, they might be on step one or before step one. They may be completely broke, bankrupt, and in despair financially. I know I was there 25 years ago. And if they find themselves there and they read further in the book and see further steps, like having a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, something in that $10,000 to $20,000 range, they kind of shut down mentally. Like, I can't do that. How do I get that done for myself? What is the path to even getting to something like that? Even though they're reading the book or watching the YouTube video like you are right now, that gives them those steps. But it's like their mind shuts down because they see this bigger, more difficult achievement or step that is further along. So I'm going to give you kind of 3 things to think about so that you don't get overwhelmed, so that you don't feel like maybe that's not for me. Maybe I can't achieve that. But get your mind thinking differently. So let's start with these 3, okay? First, once you get some information, that solid information that you resonate with, embrace it. Believe it. Suspend your own disbelief that you cannot go from the beginning of that plan all the way to the end to where you make it to debt freedom and eventually financial freedom. There are a lot of resources out here, like my YouTube channel, like different books that I've recommended here on my channel. But what you want to do is actually embrace once you get a hold of information. For me, one of the first books that really gave me a step-by-step plan was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. I continue to read quite a few other different books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad taught me that what liabilities were, and what assets were. Okay? Assets, anything that puts money in your pocket. Liability was anything that takes money out of your pocket. I also, later on, once I got further into this, I read books like The Simple Path to Wealth. And that taught me a lot about investing. But my whole point on that is that once you find information, embrace it. Embrace it and actually believe that you can make it from where you're at to to where you want to go. For me, it was 25 years from first reading The Total Money Makeover and taking on other information after that to getting to the point of being debt free. So, but I embraced it back then, and I believed that I could make it there. It was going to be a lot of steps and a long journey, but I believed once I actually read that book. So embrace. That's the first thing. Embrace your ability to get there. Number two is, how do you take this overwhelming idea? Like for me, what I was thinking about was, yes, getting out of debt and getting my finances under control. But I was reading things that were talking about creating a situation where your assets pay for your lifestyle. And that was a big journey to go from below zero, where I was at, to getting to a point to where my assets could actually pay for my lifestyle. Many of the books that I was reading, like The Millionaire Next Door, The Millionaire Mind. I also read a book called The Unemployed Millionaire. So millionaire, millionaire, millionaire was echoing in my mind. And at times that overwhelmed me, particularly even when I started to get from below zero and I started to come up. $1 million was so far away that overwhelmed me sometimes. It actually made me feel hopeless at times that I would ever reach that. Okay? Now I can see it. Now I actually know that within a handful of years that's possible. But way back, 23, 24 years ago, that was very, very hard for me to conceptualize. And it may be very, very hard for you to conceptualize now, getting to something like a 6-month or 3 or 6 month emergency fund, $10,000 to $20,000 actually in something like a high yield savings account. But how do you get from where you're at to being at a point to where you have $10,000 to $20,000 in a high yield savings account? Well, what I like thinking back to is when I was asked the question, I believe it was by a teacher, of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time was what the teacher said. And we've all heard that saying, but you really have to think about that and actually digest what that's saying. You literally could eat an entire elephant, if you were to take one bite at a time, one meal at a time, and digest each one of those meals in a step-by-step process. Then you could eat an entire elephant. This is how you have to approach things. One step at a time, one piece at a time. You can't do everything all at once. You can gain the knowledge of what to do, but then there are steps to take, taking it one step at a time. With the elephant analogy, one bite at a time. And that's the way that you want to approach these things. You can do it. And I'll throw in a little caveat here. Every time you take a step, every time you take a bite, you want to celebrate each one of those steps. It's more important when you take the first little steps in the beginning to actually celebrate it. I think about a child, when a child is learning to walk. How do we respond to that child? We're clapping. We're saying, yay to them trying to take one little step. And then when they do take one little wobbly step and even fall down, we're encouraging them. We're like, yay, awesome. That is so great that you attempted that first step and did a little bit better. the next time you did it, and so on. And we're encouraging that baby, smiling, actually, like I said, giving them that overall encouragement. And what does that do? That gets them to try again and to move further and take the next step and so on. And that's the way that you need to be in your mind as you take small steps that take your finances forward and get you further on the path. When you take that first bite, when you take that second bite, you need to be your own cheerleader in your mind. You pat yourself on the back for actually achieving what you plan to achieve, those first little steps. When you first get $2,000 worth of emergency savings, pat yourself on the back. Be encouraging. Be like, wow, you took that first step. You're great. Rather than having negative things going on in your mind, thinking, well, I've only made it to the first step of saving $2,000. I don't know if I'm good enough to get to a point to where I'm completely debt-free and building wealth so that my assets pay for my lifestyle. So again, take it one bite at a time, one step at a time, and celebrate that. Be your own cheerleader as you accomplish those steps. Finally, you want to build. You actually want to stack successes. You want to stack one on top of the other and make progression day per day. It's like a ladder or a stair. When you step on the first stair, yes, you've accomplished that and celebrate that, but look to the next stair and move up to the next stair and the next step and the next step and so on. You want to have accountability and actually expect from yourself that you're going to go to the next step and elevate your financial game, so to speak. And you want to do that. It seems sometimes that when you really are diligent about something and you actually push and press yourself to go to the next level, it seems like that would rob you of energy because you're working hard, you're pushing or whatever. But it's just the opposite. Think about your life. Whenever you accomplish something, whenever you do well in a day and accomplish things, it actually gives you more energy. It doesn't take more energy. In fact, when you do not take the steps, or at least I know this with myself, when I don't take the steps, when I don't put that energy to make to improve on what I have done before. In other words, like I said, going up a stair, going from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4 and ascending up that stair. When I do those things to do that, I feel so much better. It energizes me. It gets me to have that feeling and that momentum to go to the next level. So those 3 things. Embrace when you get the information. Convince yourself, be positive with yourself that you have what it takes to go through all of the steps. Then, like that elephant analogy, take one bite at a time, one step at a time, and celebrate when you're on the very first rung. When you're on the next rung of the ladder, celebrate that, and so on, and keep climbing. And that's the last one. Keep stacking those successes and keep climbing. Be accountable to yourself to improve and to get to the next step and the next step and so on a daily basis. Again, what did you do today? What did you do today to stack on what you did yesterday and improve on a regular basis? Thanks for listening to this one. I hope that this one helps. And as always, if you find my content valuable, go ahead and hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. Thanks again for listening.